Welcome everyone. I'm going to throw first to Matt Geneva, who's the interim CEO at SV, to do the acknowledgement of country.
Hello. Wow, what amazing energy. Like my office is upstairs and I came down and we've got sort of glass doors at the end of every corridor, and I was like, oh, I can't really hear anything. Maybe the weather has frightened people off. And then as soon as the glass door opened, I was, wow, what an amazing set of energy I walked into, which was fabulous. Thank you so much. Welcome to our beautiful offices here at Sustainability Victoria. It's wonderful to see so many people face to face. This is really what it's all about, face to face and getting together. Circularity in sport is something that's obviously very passionate and important to all of you, but equally it's important to us at Sustainability Victoria. Circular economy is our bag. It's one of our key focus areas and something we're very passionate about. I'm going to start by recognising that we meet today on Wurundjeri lands here at 321 Exhibition Street, right in the heart of Melbourne, and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. My job this morning is incredibly easy. I get to say welcome, thank you for your passion, your dedication, your interest, and thank you for coming to our beautiful space. Your priority, your safety is our priority. Sorry, excuse me. Bit of a, it's obviously I think all of your excitement has parlayed into my excitement. If you hear a beep, beep, beep this morning, that means be alert, but not alarmed. If you hear a whoop, whoop, whoop sound, please also don't be alarmed, but that is the evacuation sound, and somebody will come down and escort you out. It's probably going to be Mark over in our desk there. Someone will come and make sure you exit safely. Our key evacuation points are just here. If you need the toilets, they are also through those doors there and around to your left. So hopefully, I'm sure access has been arranged so that you can come in and out of those doors without needing a pass. One of the things that makes SV special, certainly one of the things that I think makes SV special, is this idea of bringing people together. This idea of connection, this idea of facilitation, this idea of bringing ideas to the fore and making sure that we're creating homes and spaces for the difficult conversations to have. So I'm glad that you're all here to start those conversations, to jump into this kind of idea of innovation and circularity in sport. And I genuinely hope that you get something out of it today. Unfortunately, my day is going to be nowhere near as enjoyable as yours. I don't get the privilege of staying and participating. Unfortunately, I am back to back with meetings this morning. So I get the job of the typical CEO that gets to cut the ribbon and exit stage left immediately. So I hope that your day is much more fruitful than mine. But fear not, you are in significantly better hands than me with Kate, Annabelle and Amy, and indeed many people from the SV team. So they'll be taking you through today and they'll be making sure that we get a lot out of today. So I might just leave it there and say thank you. Welcome to our offices, and I'm going to hand back to Annabelle to take you for the rest of the morning.
Great. Thanks so much, Matt, for coming and taking the time. So I'm Annabelle from Green Planet Sport. We have been so overwhelmed with the amazing response to this event. And when the going gets tough in sport, we have a team of people who are our support network. Well, it's pretty tough going for planet Earth at the moment, and we are her team. And your interest in this event and willingness to show up makes you part of her critical network. Now, the Circularity of Sport event has been a collaboration between Green Planet Sport and the incredible Kate Nicolazzo, wherever she is, up the back there, and her team from Let Me Be Frank. We've been absolutely brilliantly supported by Sustainability Victoria to put on the event, and thanks must also go to our generous sponsor, Game On Recycling. So next, we're really privileged today to hear from Kate Dundas, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Sustainability Victoria, and she will give us an overview of where the circular economy is heading in Victoria. Kate has a passion for the circular economy and she's worked across the public and private sector She co-founded 3,000 Acres, and I love this project, which aims to get more people growing more food in more places. And she co-hosted Greening the Apocalypse on Triple R for 4 years. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here, and thank you to you, Annabelle, and to Kate, and to everyone else who's been involved in putting this on. And we've got Jeff on the videos, and Alex was trying to fix our microphones earlier. So there's been, ooh, this is moving. There's been lots of people involved so far. When I told my husband I was coming to a circular economy in sport event, he was like, "Sport? You don't play sport. What do you mean?" But actually he's wrong, because I took up weightlifting a year ago, and I see weightlifting is a sport, right? Yes. And then when I was in the gym yesterday, knowing I was doing this event today, I was just having a look around the gym at all of the different materials and all of the different stuff in there. The rubber flooring, the steel bars, the merchandise, you know, we have different t-shirts every season, thinking circularity in sport, very important. Can I have just a show of hands, who is across the circular economy? Have we got experts? I know we've got experts in here. Anyone who just doesn't really have a clue? Yes. So a whole range of, yes, thank you for being brave. A whole range of knowledge. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the circular economy and what's happening in Victoria. Or do I use this to move? I should know, shouldn't I? There we go. So about circularity, in our traditional linear system, we tend to make stuff, use it, and then throw it away. So you can think about, you know, packaging for your food, all the effort and energy that goes into making it. Then we take it apart, use it, throw it in the bin. Occasionally, some of it gets recycled. Often it doesn't. It's bad because we're running out of stuff. It's not sustainable. It's Florian wrote these notes for me. I like this. It's more bad because making this stuff this way ruins the environment, and we're getting, you know, repercussions of that day in, day out. We can see what's happening to our precious world, and it's extra bad because we need this planet to sustain ourselves. So what's the alternative? The alternative is a circular economy where we make stuff, we use it, we collect it, and then we recover it. We can also reuse it. And there's lots of steps around this process that are really important to get right. The design phase. So how do we design things to make sure they can be repaired, disassembled, and reused in different ways? Jill. This is good because we keep materials at their highest value for as long as possible. It's more good because we design out waste. What we're really trying to do is design waste completely out of our system. And it's extra good because if you do it really well, you can regenerate the natural world. You know, you can think about how do we leave this place better than we found it, rather than just filling up our landfills, which are actually getting quite full. So what are we doing about it? So the Victorian government has a ambition to really rethink recycling in Victoria. We've had a recycling crisis, as you would have heard about in the news in the last couple of years. And the first step towards circularity is resolving the crisis. And then we can move towards how do we design things differently? How do we actually rethink our systems completely in Victoria to be able to collect, recover and reuse our resources? So some of you might live in council areas that have got 4 bins now. Anyone got a glass bin yet? Yeah, eventually we're all going to have a glass bin and we'll be able to separate out our waste much more easily, and then we can recover and reuse it much more easily. And I know there's many different thoughts on that, but I was just in Europe and you can see that collective approach to recycling much more obviously there, where there's shared resources and a shared way of people recycling their products. So we'll probably end up moving towards that eventually. We've got new laws in Victoria. We've got the Circular Economy Act that's just been through Parliament, and that'll do some really great things around, well, one example is data. So it mandates the collection of data so that we're able to really understand how the circular economy is tracking in Victoria. And I should have put this in the slide, but I've got a little printout to show how circular we are in Victoria at the moment. We've got metals at a 91% recovery rate, which is, you know, really quite good, all the way down to textiles. And textiles are a really big problem for us in Victoria, where we're only recovering 14% of textiles. Now, when you think about sport and all of the different uniforms, it's a really amazing opportunity to think about how we do that differently. The other things that are happening in Victoria around this $500 million worth of investment is a statewide ban on single-use plastics, which again will be very good for the state and just kind of help nudge that behaviour change along. So what are we doing in SV? We've got 3 pillars that we work across. The first one's innovation and investment, and we've been putting out hundreds of millions of dollars into industry to help people to transition towards a circular economy. That's investment into new materials recycling processes, into industrial techniques, into research and development, working with industry to help think about how do we do things differently. We are experts in behaviour change, so we work a lot with the community to help people understand and learn how to do things differently. We run campaigns across different cold communities. We run campaigns across various different things. I'm trying to think of some of the names. Help me out. Yeah, small act, big impact. So you can go online and choose your small act to help you have a big impact, and there's lots and lots of data and research flowing into that too. And then the last one is education. So we work in schools to help the next generation of kids understand what it looks like to live in a different circular economy and what their responsibility is to get there. I want to give a shout out to Florian and the SV Lab. Something we've been doing recently is investing into our technical expertise. So Florian's our senior advisor, circular economy. He's also an industrial designer, and him and the team are looking at futures. So what's the trajectory of the circular economy in Victoria? What do our preferred futures look like in 10 to 20 years? And what are the steps we need to take to get us there? So what the team can do is run analysis on various different things. So we might do one on sport, and then we can post it on the website. You can see what the trends are. So why are we excited to be part of this event? Something that I think is a really interesting and amazing opportunity is that the research done around economics in the circular economy show that it's $1 billion opportunity for Victoria. I can see we've got Tennis Australia, people from the Commonwealth Games. You know, investment into the circular economy gives Victoria a competitive advantage. We can unleash capital, we can unleash jobs, investment. So it makes financial sense, and of course it makes environmental and social sense. There's so many materials to look at. Sport covers, you know, if I look at my diagram, metals, rubber, glass, plastics, textiles. It encompasses lots of different things that we need to change. So, you know, if we could focus on one sector, then sport is a fabulous example of that. And circularity is new and it can be a little bit complicated, as everything environmental can be. So learning from experts is great, but learning from each other is even better. So we want to make sure that you make the most of the networking opportunities here, listening to the experts, talking to each other, building connections, and making sure those connections continue so that we're able to work together to achieve that circular economy and unlock all of that opportunity for Victoria. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks, Kate. I'm looking forward to seeing that analysis on sport, just to throw you in there, Florian. So why is this important to sport? So we've heard a lot about the circular economy, and it really gives us a framework to tackle challenges like climate change, biodiversity loss, waste and pollution. And if we just take one of these global challenges, climate change, it alone is an existential threat to sport. So in simple terms, we rely on a good day of weather for a really great day of sport. Weather is the conditions on the day. Climate is the weather averaged over a long time, and climate change is the changes we are seeing in these averages. This presents as disruptive climate hazards, and we see it and feel it every day now. We can probably all think of a situation in recent times when sport has been impacted in some way at local or international level by climate change. like the 100% man-made snow at the Beijing Olympics in 2022, and the extensive flooding across Australia, which it seems like's been all year. Our local cricket club is training on retired tennis courts, and our grounds are looking like they'll be inaccessible until after Christmas. So extreme weather events damage infrastructure. They reduce our playable days of sport. It's too hot, it's too wet, it's too dry, it's too smoky, it's too dangerous. So it requires all levels of sport and government then to redeploy human and financial resources to manage the fallout. And it's the individuals and communities who already have less access to sport and physical activity who are and will continue to be impacted first and most by climate change. And it's their playable days that matter the most for their physical, mental health benefits that sport and physical activity provide. So when we increase the circularity of the sports ecosystem, we become part of the solution, and we seek to save those really great days of play in a fair and just way. And so that's a bit of a snapshot of the why. So if I bring us back locally for a minute and give you a snapshot of the problem of sports uniform, which we're focusing on today, merchandise and equipment using entry-level kids sport to paint the picture, I took 2019 participation numbers of 7 entry-level sports programs that take place across Australia, like Aussie Hoops, and I matched them to their participation pack contents. And the results are really quite staggering. 2,942,160 items in 1 year across 7 entry-level sports. Now, this is not naming and shaming. This is demonstrating just volume, because these programs do provide that initial touch point for engagement and include messaging like fair play and healthy eating. Many of the decisions around these kits are tightly held in commercial departments in licensing, branding and sponsorship. And if we start thinking outside of that commercial paradigm, imagine if we redeployed the money that's spent on those things for the things and design around something like what makes sport fun. So things like being challenged, playing well as a team, trying your best, playing with friends and having a friendly coach is some of the interim research that's coming out of PASI and by Rochelle Eam as to why sport is fun to play for children and youth. So we need some guiding principles for today. And so we've come up with 5. And we've developed these from global frameworks. So the first 3 circular economy principles that come from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is one of the leading foundations on the circular economy. And Kate has touched on those in her introduction. And the 4th one, it comes from Green Planet Sport and Let Me Be Frank. So partnership development and working together is absolutely an enabler for sport to be successful in this space. And the last one, advocating for the circular economy, is something that I want to touch on because that's what motivates us. The global reach of sport is unsurpassed by any other cultural phenomenon of modern times. At the Sports Positive Summit last week in the UK, we heard research studies show that athletes hold 56% of global influence, compared to 1 to 2% of our climate scientists. Brian McCulloch from Texas A&M University, a member of the Sport Ecology Group, states, research shows you can bypass resistance to environmental messages of individuals by engaging them through their sport or team. The United Nations is all over this with the International Olympic Committee and has committed to a global sector approach to engage sport in accelerating emissions reductions and climate action among sport's global citizens. It's got 300 global signatories, including Australian sports, some of which are in the room today. And it has 5 principles of action, all of which are supporting working in the, if we work in the circular economy, it supports all of those 5 actions. So our actions to get our sports houses in order is one of necessity to align with legislation, licensing, good business practice, public expectations, particularly the expectations of young people. And it's work that we need to match the urgency and scale of the problem, and it needs to be front of mind. Yet the most value in our sector lies in our reach and our ability to mobilise our team. We can normalise working in the circular economy. We have the skills and drive to combat the scale of use our skills and drive to combat the size of the problem of climate action, because our sector is ambitious and we're driven and we're innovative. We set brave targets to achieve in our high performance and participation areas all of the time, every year. And we watch and follow sport for the passion, the comeback, the stories, and it may not be why we play, but it's why we follow. And so the UN knows that sport's global reach, and we have an incredible opportunity now to collaborate in sport to make it tangible, real, and a magical difference. So that's the crux of why we're here today. So we're now going to go to our panels. And first up, I'd like to welcome this group to the stage. So Brad Morris is going to be coming to us from Sydney. And then Michael, if you'd like to come up as well. We're just going to get some mics on the go.
Are we sitting this far apart?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Hi, Brad.
Hey, how you going?
Yeah, we've got Brad on the screen. Yeah. How's that? Great. So we're going to be talking about uniforms and merchandise and rethinking those things. So we're going to talk to each of the panelists individually and then have some questions and throw it open to the floor. Brad, thanks so much for joining us today from Sydney. And you are the founder of Miami, which is a high-end virtual fashion label, and also of X Label, which is establishing a meaningful presence in the metaverse through community fandom, product digitisation, and the virtual experience. Now, we've got a video which I think, I can't see you that way. We've got a video that I think we will show first, Brad, and then we'll be able to launch into a bit of a discussion.
Perfect.
Awesome, I love that. Now, this has got quite a backstory to it, and I think we probably want to have a bit of a chat about values-based communication and where this sits in the virtual realm. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Brad, to tell us a bit about the Ice Runner.
Yeah, perfect. Amazing to be here. So thank you for inviting me. I think, as you've mentioned, Miami is a kind of the tech luxe digital fashion house, kind of thinking about how we can dress the internet and kind of, you know, with a really kind of clear focus on people's digital identities. And when you start thinking about digital identity, you start actually unpacking that, not just in terms of the aesthetics of how things need to look, but also in terms of kind of what you stand for as an individual. Like what do you want to represent you in those digital environments? So for us, we start to unpack that and look at, you know, your values, your beliefs and your interests, and actually thinking about how actually through digital fashion, you can essentially wear your heart on your sleeve. You can actually demonstrate beyond just wearing a physical item of clothing what you actually believe in. So the Ice Runner for us was a collaboration with the UN, where last year at COP26, we wanted to really sort of dramatize as a sort of you know, simplistic way, you know, the idea of how do we deliver a sort of a virtual barometer of the race towards you know, zero emissions. So that sneaker was created with a view to kind of, you know, whilst people are trying to unpack climate change and try and understand all the data, actually, can we just do that through a sneaker where as the polar ice caps melt, so too does the sneaker. And hopefully if people's kind of climate emissions and the way that we kind of approach sustainability starts to improve, hopefully the sneaker can reform as well. So every day the sneaker melts. It's melting at exactly the same time as the polar ice caps, and it will continue to be that reminder, you know, of the kind of the challenges that we face from a climate change perspective. When we sold the sneaker, it's worth saying that someone purchased that sneaker for $10,000, and now they're walking around in the metaverse wearing those sneakers as kind of Mr. or Mrs. Climate Change. So, you know, that in and of itself is pretty cool. And 100% of the sales actually went back into the UN around the Digital Art for Climate initiative that they have, that they run every year.
Yeah, and I think we've spoken a lot, Brad, about that wearing your heart on your sleeve and that value that can be created in the digital and virtual world, where we can start looking at what we have in sport, where you wear your heart on your sleeve, like your Richmond Tigers scarf or your Saints scarf, and see where we can use the virtual world to capture that moment in time. And I'd just like to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think this is the beauty of, I mean, it's a bit of a spurious thing now to talk about the words NFT, and kind of, I think actually over time that technology will kind of fade into the background, and it'll be much more around the idea of programmable things, like programmable digital assets. So I think if you start like that, you start to think about, okay, well, actually what's the value that we can imbue in the digital things that we're creating, and then how do we bring people closer to the things that they love. So when we start thinking about that from a sports perspective, you know, digital fashion might be something that people think, well, actually that's so fringe, that's not really, how can I connect with that? But actually if you look at it in terms of application, it's really quite simple. You've got gaming skins that we know that kind of people play, you know, and wear every day. Millions of people do that. Think about social media lenses, so AR filters, people kind of wearing different things through their social media. All of those applications already exist. So what we're starting to do now is program them around digital ownership and actually say, well, if you own this, you get a reward. And I think when we start to apply that to sport specifically, it's about having that sort of that tokenization of being able to say, well, I own something that's quite unique. I own something that unlocks something that brings me closer to, you know, the team that I love or the sport that I love. And I think that's kind of the cool aspect of stuff. It's, you know, it's not just about trading NFTs and trying to generate, you know, additional sort of revenue, which actually is a massive bonus of what we're doing here. It's almost unlocking a brand new kind of area for businesses to generate kind of, you know, low carbon kind of, you know, benefits for the company. But actually from a pure play consumer perspective, it's just awesome to be able to say, well, actually I've got another thing, you know, another memento, another experience that's going to bring me closer to the thing that I love. Yeah,
and I think that's critical for sport in this area of the circular economy, because our merchandise and our revenue raising from that has to be replaced in another way. And this could potentially, and I believe it is, one of those ways, but we've really got to do it properly so that we're building that identity for people so that it becomes something where they're connecting with each other and with the virtual world, but not replacing sport. Now, we've got another example of something that you've done, and I think that this sort of starts to bring that identity to the fore.
is a hot start. This is a white hot start for Geelong. Can the skipper ignite something here? I reckon he has. Now Smith has already got a couple. He's got another one. It is raining goals. Another one, Cats.
The skipper, the hero, the superstar. What a moment.
They have blown the Swans away.
Amazing. Now, AFL Mint and that cup, can you tell us about the concept and what it achieved?
Yeah, I think so. The awesome thing about this as I guess as a concept. So what we did was, and this is X Label now, not Miami. X Label being the the company behind brands, helping them onboard into Web3 from Web2. That was a digital twin of the physical Premiership Cup, so an identical replica down to the leaves, down to the the kind of engraving on the cup. Everything was like for like, one-to-one, perfect sort of match. That cup essentially was a way of onboarding people into a new ecosystem. And if you think about the idea of souvenirs, it couldn't probably get any better than that. When you're a massive fan of the AFL, you're watching the grand final, you've got your favorite team, the idea of actually being able to own the first digital twin, the first cup for your team, for Geelong, and kind of having that as a memento. Actually, over time, we can start to see, not only can you hold on to that, but will there be a second cup next year, and a third cup, and a fourth cup, and people start to move into that ecosystem around programmable things, and the idea that obviously once you're in there, you're going to start to enjoy a multitude of different things within that. So I think that's just one example of just getting people aware of the transition, and actually rather than selling physical versions, that you can own the digital one, and it brings you into a brilliant community of people that already exist.
Yeah, I love that bringing into community, and I think that's where, if we're working in this space, working with people like you really can help capture those moments in time. So you get swept up in that, just like you would get swept up in buying a merchandise kit when you sign up for your membership. And hopefully we'll see that there instead at some point in time. Now, we do need to move on, but stay there, Brad, because we're going to have lots of questions for you, I'm sure. Now, we've got Katja Kremer actually can't be here today, so we've got a little bit of time back in our session. But because she's unwell, and we wish her a very speedy recovery. Katja is a 2-time Winter Olympian and Snow Sports Australia board member, and a director of projects at HIP Hype. The intellect of sustainability and drive as an athlete that Katja has is something that we hope to capture at another time. And we do have some athletes in the room and online. I know that we've got the AFL Players for Climate Action here, so thanks for coming, guys. And just in the theme of uniforms and merchandising, I know that the AFL Players for Climate Action uses the Common Good Company for their merchandise, which they're probably wearing today. So, it's really, if you're working in this space, walking the talk, and definitely the AFL Players for Climate Action are doing that. So hopefully we can catch up with you later in the day as well. Now, and that's Katja in action. So Amelia Crook, we're going to present next. I pre-recorded this with Amelia on Jaja Warren country, and so I'll just play straight to that, and we've cut out all of my questions so that we've just got Amelia's information, and we'll play that now.
A year ago, I announced to the world that I had misplaced my personal style during the pandemic. And I asked TikTok to help me find my personal style, and the catch was that I was only going to buy secondhand clothes because I was increasingly becoming aware of the impact fashion is having on the planet. This was a personal project, nothing to do with my professional life, but it ended up that I had 137,000 people following me. I've been in The Guardian, The New York Times, and on a US talk show, which was completely unexpected. But as a product manager in the digital space, seeing this conversation that was very active had obviously struck a nerve about the secondhand fashion. I got interested in secondhand fashion as a model, as something that could be an interesting thing to pursue. So I looked overseas at the different models and where resale was at overseas, and we're about 8 to 10 years behind the US in terms of how clothes are getting back into circulation. And a big part of that is that the infrastructure just doesn't exist in Australia to enable that. It does at the charity space, but not for brands. So I created OwnerShift. Well, if someone else isn't going to do it, I'm going to do it, because I really believe that the future of a more sustainable fashion industry comes from the relationship between brands and their customers. That there's already a seed there that millions of dollars have been poured into, to be frank, that we can use to grow a more sustainable and circular future.
Yeah, I really love that, because I think in sport, that brand relationship between sport and their fans, so not necessarily consumers, but their fans, is an important seed that people really strive to keep moving forward with, from a commercial aspect, but also just by being part of their community.
Totally. Do not underestimate the power of brands to create change. So we are the technology and logistics to enable trade-in programs. So a brand can offer incentives to their customers to bring items that they no longer want back. And then we manage that for them. So an item comes back to us via the brand. We then sort, condition report, and assess that item and give the incentive back to the customer, the original customer. We then prepare that item for resale. So we launder it, photograph it, and then list it for sale on a secondhand website that we run for them. All of this is branded, so we sit behind the brands. So in theory, Patagonia are doing this overseas. Patagonia, you'd give your jacket back if you're done with it, that hiking trip that you took and then never went on another one again. You'd give that item back to Patagonia, get an incentive, and then there's when you go to patagonia.com, you click on Worn Wear, which is their resale program, you can then buy that jacket. And it's as good as new. It's been cleaned, it's been checked for holes or whatever, and you get that for about half the price of retail. So the early adopters of this overseas, and likely to be same here, is brands that pour a lot of money into the durability, design, and high quality of their items. So that is outdoor wear like Patagonia, technical performance wear. Lululemon have just launched their channel overseas and it's going great guns. So it's this sort of more technical stuff, which is where sports is an obvious overlap. Items that are designed for longevity to begin with, and that brands can stand behind multiple owners owning. So that does rule out fast fashion. Those items are designed for obsolescence. They are not designed for longevity. So resale doesn't make sense in that aspect at all.
Yeah.
So our long-term goal is to incentivize people to buy higher quality, and by lowering the price point of high quality items to a second-hand price point, hopefully we're bringing the market up to be able to afford higher quality items.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting for sport again, in that we have high performance gear, but we also, that's apparel, but we also have high performance gear. So when you think about the outdoor industry with kayaks and that sort of equipment, we also have that in sport in a range of different ways. So how would sport be able to perhaps capitalise on something like OwnerShift for their gear even?
So the biggest challenge with any resale program is getting items back. So incentivizing people to get it out of their cupboards or wardrobes or wherever it is, but then managing the items. Our retail industry is set up for very linear passage of items. So one SKU has multiple items behind it and they get shipped out. Getting anything back in is tricky, and the real trick with resale is that each item is a snowflake. because it could be exactly the same jacket, but it's been worn slightly differently. And so one is a good condition and one is as new condition. So that means they're different SKUs. And no warehouse system, no 3PL, no software is set up to enable that single SKU management. So that's what we're building. This is the important piece that's missing in Australia, the infrastructure to enable that. And that goes for canoes and basketballs and other items that have been worn differently and therefore are their own special snowflakes. Designing for longevity is the first piece. So this, if you're designing something to be high performance, it needs to be high performance for a long time if you want it to have a resale value. But also designing to be circular. So if it has had multiple resales, that's great, but eventually it will reach its end of life, and then it needs to be able to be disassembled into different parts that can then go into the right recycling or end of life channel for those parts of it. I think merchandising is a really tricky area to get right because the business model is attached to volume and it's attached to turnover, right? So the more you sell, the more money you get. The overarching goal is to design for high quality and longevity, and then make that affordable, perhaps through a resale channel. But the way of the future in the apparel industry is not mass producing items and chucking them out within a year. We buy 100 billion items of clothes per year, and we throw 60% of them out within 12 months. Wow. That's insane. That can't continue. We will need 2.3 planets worth of resources by 2030 if we continue on that spectrum, and that includes sports and all the merchandise. So we need to address that.
Great. So there's some real great stats in there. And I think when you're doing your mini hack later, think about that design for durability and longevity, and avoiding where possible from the start. Now, we've got Michael with us here today from Apparel. Michael is the co-founder and CEO of Apparel in Australia and New Zealand, and it's our leading textile recovery, repurpose and recycling organisation. Apparel is a certified B Corp, and you're and for Sustainability Champions of Australia as well, and the partner of choice for retailers, global fashion brands and organisations looking to eradicate textile waste. Michael is recognised as one of the top 50 leaders in e-commerce and the voice for textile waste solutions and circularity in Australasia. And we are so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
So now, everywhere I look, I see apparel at the moment. So I first found you guys a while ago and have been trying to hook you in with different sports organisations around Australia. And you have been witness through your longevity in the industry, right back from when you started to where we are now. And I'm sure it has been an incredible change. So I'd really like to hear a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, no, thanks, obviously. Obviously, that means our marketing's working very well, and we're creating a lot of awareness. And I think that's, the journey that we've been on for the last few years. So Apparel started off as a sock brand called Man Rags. Some people won't be very much aware of that, but we sold socks by subscription. And over in 2019, we began to ask ourselves what was happening at the end life of our product. Fast forward a while, and it was kind of, there's a key trigger point in time where we said, hang on, we're producing this awesome product. We're distributing our product to over 70 countries around the world. What's happening with our product at end of life? And we launched Australia's, or actually the world's first sock take back program. Fast forward to today, where we're just about to hit 1,000 tonnes of textiles diverted from landfill. What we did and what we know is, we needed to make it easy, convenient, seamless for consumers to recycle and send back any of their unwanted product. unwanted product may be fit for wear, may not be fit for wear. And throughout the last few years, what happened was as brands, retailers, organisations started to see what we were capable of doing with products, whether it be reusing, repurposing or recycling and upcycling and converting into new items, we started to see a lot of brands jump on board. And so that's where, today we are the brand behind the brands and their sustainability efforts, whether it be your leading Australian global retailers to like the likes of Cotton On, who people would say are fast fashion, but we're probably proud to say they're Australia's most active textile recycler, taking responsibility for their end of life items. So for us, it's always been this. And when we talk about, you're seeing us a lot, it's all about sharing a message around, we're not anti-consumerism, anti-materialism, but what we are all about is taking responsibility for what happens at end of life and wanting to educate that next generation. You go out and you buy something has to happen with it at the end. And so we need to think about that up front. And, we look around the room today, there's, AFL Players for Climate Change, upcoming partners. When you think about sports, we support a lot of organisations in the sporting place, whether it be people like Cheetah Teamwear, who create uniforms for grassroots, footy clubs and other sporting clubs, or whether it's someone like Toyota, who sent us all the remaining Australian Olympic uniforms. Essentially what we do and what we've created in the background is we take items, we identify whether they're fit for wear or not fit for wear. If they're fit for wear, they're provided to charities, social enterprise, not-for-profits all over the country. And we have two key requirements that we place on ourselves and two key commitments. And we also pass those key things on to our partners. That being that nothing that we receive and nothing that we provide them with, nothing goes into landfill and nothing goes offshore. The key reasons behind both of those is nothing into landfill, because it's kind of why we exist. But the piece around nothing offshore is, as a certified B Corp, we have complete traceability and transparency on what we do. We have a complete chain of custody, knowing items that we provide to people, what's happening with them afterwards, and ensuring that if they don't need them, that they come back and we provide them to the next group of people that require them. On the side of what we do on the reuse, on the repurpose, sorry, we've sat back and over the last 3 years really worked to identify how we can turn textiles into something else. And so I'm sure if I didn't provide any videos, but on our website you can see ceiling tiles like what you see above your head. The insulation that sits behind them can be created out of discarded textiles, but instead we're importing certain products from overseas to create that. I was looking at these panels behind us, these noise cancelling acoustic panels on the walls. Again, products that can be made in Australia with recycled textiles and things that we've innovated over time.
These ones are.
They are. Right.
And imagine if those Olympic team uniforms or any of the uniforms coming out of sport end up back in those venues, because Brisbane 2032 will be a climate positive games.
Well,
have you got the inside word?
Well, look, the really interesting one is we sat down with Football Australia in 2020 at the very beginning of this virus thing that happened, and we sat back and we looked at, so Football Australia being soccer, and we looked at the amount of uniforms that are produced in the from the Matildas all the way through to grassroots, which all sit under the Football Australia Association, FFA back then, now Football Australia. We identified that within 1 year, if we had created a take-back scheme through Football Australia, we would have diverted enough textiles and had been able to convert them into the cushions that could have sat at the Women's World Cup next year. Now, unfortunately, virus kicked in. We couldn't launch a take-back scheme in 2020. 2021 continued to present other challenges. But, we were already looking at that and going, hang on, why don't we put Australia on show here and go, well, the seats that you're sitting on in this stadium that's, being broadcast around the world are made from recycled textiles from, previous, football players. And so we're already looking at things like that, and we have a real opportunity here in Australia. And, a lot of people in the room, have heard this, and are partners that, are working with us and supporting us on this journey to really showcase how awesome we can be. And, a key point of difference is that, circularity is, for us, it's kind of this, it is the goal, absolutely is the goal, and we're demonstrating it that today. But, we have a real transparent, honest conversation on that sustainability comes before circularity. You need to take responsibility for that end of life item, bring that back through the chain, and then reintroduce it as something else. You can't start working on that end product without first taking responsibility.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing. The opportunity we have in sport over the next 10 years with the multitude of mega events that we're going to be running and the partnerships that we can form. When we look at the conversations with all of the people, whether they're here or we've done the stream with Brad and with Amelia, that circularity comes into play. So we've got our design and avoid right through to how we're going to collect and reuse and resale and repurpose right through to the recycling. And so, Kate, I think I'll throw to you now. And as you hear this conversation and you think about weightlifting maybe and the stuff that you're using or not, I'd really be interested in your thoughts at how you see this start to form for partnerships with government and business and sport all working together in this space.
Firstly, it's just been amazing listening to all of the casually sit down, all of the inspirational things that are happening around the place. Like the work that you're all doing is just amazing. And anybody in here can do that work, I think, too. Is Kate okay?
It's okay. We're sorted. It's come up, Kate. No, it's fine. Sorry. If we threw Menti, you can start asking questions. Okay, and Kate's going to moderate that. Sorry, Kate.
Okay, good. I'll sit back.
Not you, Kate, here. Other Kate.
So many Kates. And we're both dressed the same to equally confuse everybody. So partnerships. So I think what Sustainability Victoria spent a bit of time doing when we were developing our new strategy was to think about what's the role of government. There's lots of innovations happening in the market, and we really want to make sure that we're able to step in at the right time and get out of the way at the right time. So something that we've been working on is the Circular Economy Business Innovation Centre, and we've got Emma and others representing today. So that's an online portal that attempts to connect people with one another and also give out grants into various different sectors to help to instigate some of those changes that are required. So we had, I've forgotten her name. Amelia talking about the fact that we don't have the right technology in Australia to be doing the logistics behind getting things back. That's when we were able to step in and say, well, if you don't have the business case and it's not market ready, that's the role of government to help at that stage of innovation, at that really early stage. So that's what the Circular Economy Business Innovation Centre is aimed at. And you're able to call up and speak to experts, and then they can put you in touch with other people that might be having similar challenges to you.
And do you know what? That's why this is on today. So I made one of those calls and I spoke for an hour to one of the CVIC staff about this concept and idea that Kate and I had been talking about for a couple of years. And that's why we're here. So really it does work. Yeah.
Great. Well done, everyone. Go team. So yeah, that's where we see the role of government really is to be helpful and not to be annoying, and to identify red tape and then hopefully work behind the scenes on policy and on partnerships to get rid of that red tape, because really it's the people doing the work. Like Michael, I'm sure you've come across lots of barriers along the way, and it's only from people like you that we will understand what government needs to do to be able to accelerate our transition and not put barriers in the way. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yep, that's fantastic, and it is working. Now, Kate is going to moderate the question. So, we've got one. So this is for Michael to start off with. How many times on average can textiles be recycled?
Depends on the material, depends on the fabric composition, and what its second life is. So it's not an easy question to answer, but from a cotton, organic, virgin materials, non-synthetics, it can be multiple times. When synthetics are involved, we see that at, capped at 1 or 2 times.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, you sure can.
When I was listening to the discussion, I was thinking about youth sport and how high performing does equipment actually need to be? Because lots of the stuff my kids get is synthetic fabrics, plastic fabrics, but surely he'd be okay in a cotton t-shirt that can be composted.
Can I just add to that really is part of that design. So that passion for sport and wanting to be like Michael Jordan, and so how can we make wanting to be like Michael Jordan wearing your jersey again and again and again?
So this is this is where we're at today. And this is the kind of thing where, if anyone was to jump out and highlight, we should be doing this and that without actually having been on this journey, we don't know. So we're very proud and unashamed to say we learn as we go, and we don't know what we don't know till we learn. And so I'll give you an example of that. A tote bag, a cotton tote bag, and obviously not sporting attire just yet, but it will come back to it. But probably the easiest example where an organisation has, creatively and responsibly decided to use a recycled PET care label in that bag because it's recycled PET, means we've just lost 3% of recyclability off that tote bag because we've had to cut that out and throw it away. So, where we're at today is as we're seeing items come through in mass and looking at them, we're reporting back to brands, reporting back to retailers on, hey, this Lululemon, you guys are awesome. Lululemon is probably one of our largest customers from 2021, but it's turn around and go, hey guys, you made these awesome tights. Why the hell did you throw this metal pin on the bottom of the tights that says L? Now I get branding, right? I get branding because we've had brands and we've got a brand and you're seeing it everywhere. So, we get it. It's very important. But on the recyclability side, number one, we've just consumed a cost to decommission it. In the decommissioning, which it means the removal of hardware and zips and things like that, to try and keep, separate materials where we can lose up to 15% off that. So we didn't know that a year ago. Now we do. We're reporting that back, and what we'll see is the next element of design come back with that. But it starts at that point of starting that journey, and we get more and more.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to keep coming back to design today, and I think that's really a critical element. Now, the next question is how much of a threat is greenwashing and what we can we do about that? And I'm going to throw that to Brad, actually, because I know that a lot of people always ask me when I go, oh my God, this digital world, it's amazing, that it uses a lot of energy. And I know that we've had that conversation, so I think we'll give you this one, Brad.
Yeah, well, I think interestingly, 2 weeks ago, probably the biggest decarbonisation event happened with what was known as the merge. So Ethereum moving to a kind of proof of stake sort of protocol. So when it comes to NFTs and sort of and carbon sort of emissions, that's actually virtually non-existent now when you look at sort of this shift from 11 million tons of kind of carbon being produced from kind of, from crypto, and Ethereum moving to under kind of 870 now. So it's literally like powering a laptop, and actually in comparison to other businesses or other entities, if you look at, say, Ethereum in terms of terawatts, I think it's like 0.01. PayPal is 0.26. Gold is 240. So actually, when you start looking at that comparatively, The great thing about technology is it continues to evolve. So when we think about kind of the olden days, it's pretty much the likes of kind of, crypto from 2 years ago was probably like a kind of a gas guzzling car, and it's now already shifted fully to electric. So when it comes to kind of the digital output of kind of being sustainable in what we're doing, I think actually now that's a thing of the past, which is amazing. There's obviously lots of different protocols, but almost all of them now, especially in that sort of proof of stake area, is very sustainable. So we can now actually be true to what we want to try and deliver. And actually it's interesting, around this whole topic of sustainability, Miami back in October, November could have quite easily done a big NFT drop and driven tons of sales and maybe walked away with a couple of $1 million at least in terms of kind of the peak of kind of crypto and NFTs. But we chose not to, because we were looking at kind of how do we make sure that everything is carbon neutral and kind of net positive in that sort of way. And now actually the technology has truly caught up. So there's an amazing opportunity to really think about the alternative to physical, but it's not about replacing the physical. There's environments where you need to have those physical clothes, whether that be actually in at a game, at a match, watching sport physically, or meeting your friends in a physical environment. But you have to kind of unpack who the audience is and where they consume the things that they're consuming. So going back to my earlier point around gaming and social media, these are not new learned behaviors. They're existing behaviors where people want to represent, that Michael Jordan moment that you just mentioned. So it's kind of, I think there's a great opportunity now to kind of don't worry too much around the technology and kind of the carbon sort of footprint of that, because actually it's being addressed and has been addressed. It's now about that transition, into finding new ways to bring people closer to the sports that they love, and actually replacing those physical moments when physical isn't needed.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And I think that in all of these spaces, things are moving rapidly, and being able to ask questions of your partners so that you know what's happening in the back end is a really important question to have in your bag when you're going and starting down the sustainability journey.
Just conscious of the time, I'm just going to check if anyone in the room has a really burning question, because we've got 20 questions, 21 now, questions on the thing. So I feel like I'd actually really like to take those away and either we can take those away and either design a new event or potentially help come up with some other answers. But it'd be really good just to check in, because we've only got a couple minutes left on this session. Is there anyone in the room, you might have already put your question on there, but it's a really burning question for you that you'd like to ask, just so we can hear from some other people in the room and I can walk around? Yep, great. All the way at the back, that was always going to happen, wasn't it? We need to use the microphone so people online can hear you.
This is for Michael from Apparel. Just one of your two principles when passing sort of reusable items on, one of them was it can't end in landfill. I'm just interested, like, how's that track? Because if that goes to, say, a charity or an op shop, or I'm not sure exactly, like, do you track where, like, the individual, like, because I guess ultimately I feel like it's going to end in an individual's hands at some point. It's about educating that person. So, like, I guess you can't guarantee it doesn't end up in landfill, or can you? No.
So I think, from a chain of custody perspective, the minute it leaves us, we need to ensure that it's not going into landfill from one of our partners. I can't, we can't control that. We provide it to Boots for All. Boots for All is committed not to sending it to landfill. The agreement that we have, and so we're a commercial enterprise, we're fiercely independent, which actually means that our guys working in our facilities are all paid staff. So Joanne, anyone walk in there and see all these people working, getting paid to do the right thing, right? So we actually pass on that responsibility with our partners. So if we have a Vinnie's or Save the Children or whoever, Sacred Heart Mission or Boots for All, whatever it is, anyone that's coming in to take something, the agreement is we've paid people to sort through this and ensure that it's worthy of being reused. If you don't need it, bring it back. Right, if you can't sell it, bring it back. And so we actually put things into place with them, and we've done that at a level of, a crisis housing around the corner, all the way through to Vinnie's 120 stores in Victoria. We can't guarantee what happens next, but I'm very blunt and very, kind of arrogant when it comes to this. And I mean, that's the commitment we pass to our partners. So I pass on the same to from our partners, and so pass the same on to ours. And it's very straightforward, as in we can have a tracker placed on us at any time, and we could potentially place a tracker back on you.
Add something to that.
Go, Kate.
We are moving towards tracking everything, actually. We've got a circular economy metrics programme that we're working on in the Victorian government, where eventually we will be able to track everything as it moves around the system. So fabric, metal, plastics, to then calculate how circular we are and understand fully what's happening to things. It's a few years away yet, and we need everybody to get involved in that, but it's started.
Yeah, and I'd just like to pull up on that point of being brave. So, you know, we've got to be brave in this space, and sport's really good at being brave. So now, who's going to be brave for our last question?
Mara's closer. We'll come back to you later. Annabelle, I might just keep on time.
Michael, hi. Question is synthetics versus natural fibres. Like, we talk a lot about where stuff goes, but what about where it comes from? How do we keep making stuff from petroleum?
Okay, so we're not in the business of producing. What we can do is advise our partners and customers on what happens from a recyclability perspective, levels of recyclability based on products. I think that whole space of we know, and that probably comes down, this is going to be a complex one, but looking at that question, but I'll try and keep it short. It'll come down to a CO2 abatement model, which is what is the abatements of synthetics versus organics and other materials. And only through that knowledge and understanding will people make the decisions that they choose to. Yeah, that's as short as I can.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And maybe we can follow up offline. We've just got one last question for this session. Thanks, Sheila.
Hi, Annabelle. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Question from Michael, and to your point earlier on about the FIFA Women's World Cup, I'm the head of sustainability for the FIFA Women's World Cup. Would love to explore this topic more if it's not too late. The question I had for you, and I know Annabelle said later you'll be talking a lot about design, but you know, obviously, as the trajectory of your history, you've really come on the scene. You have a lot of influence. You're talking to big brands. How much are you pushing on them for changing the design end of it so that we don't have to deal with their shit on the back end? Sorry for the language.
Excellent question. Price, right? So we'll turn around and say, and this is what will make the difference. And this is why being commercial is so important. Because if I turn around and say, this T-shirt costs $2.50 to recycle, this one over here costs $3.50 because it's a disaster, what will happen next? They will, two things. Number one, reduce the number of T-shirts that they make because they now have to pay to put them into a recycling process. And number two, look to make a T-shirt that has a better recyclability at the outset, then furthermore, you know, focusing on the materials used. And that's really, I think that's what's going to make the difference. Where we know when it hurts our pocket, that's where it's going to be. We know that, yeah, government intervention as that comes in and regulates and mandates what happens with end-of-life items, that's there. But I think what we're seeing so far is, you know, from our growth, whether it be the local brands or the global brands that we work with, they are taking the steps today to be ahead of any government intervention.
Awesome, thank you. So I'd like to thank all of our panellists so much, and Brad, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for being here in person, Kate and Michael as well. So let's give them a round of applause. Now we're going into morning tea, and I'm going to welcome Warren Overton to come forward. And Kate and Michael, you can take your seats again if you'd like. Yeah, come and sit close to me. Now, Warren, you're the CEO of ANZRP, and you are also then, oh yeah, awesome, we've got two, integral in running Game On Recycling, and we cannot thank you enough for the support that you've given us today. We would not be eating morning tea, which we were going to do shortly, without you, and it would be a much shorter event. So we're going to show a quick video, and then I'm going to let you talk.
Let's go. Let's go. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Woo. Let's go. Go. Let's go. Let's go. Check it out now. Go. Let's go. Let's go. Check it out now. Let's go. Let's go.
Right now, Australia's seeing a huge excess of unused tennis balls going into landfill. That's why we've started the Game On Recycling pilot, supported by Wilson. Visit gameonrecycling.com.au to find a collection point near you.
Awesome. So now, Warren, just tell us really quickly what Game On Recycling is, because we are going to hear from you later on as well, and how you can get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. That still makes me smile every time I see it. We should give a prize for whoever can name the tennis player there. But anyway, so Game On Recycling, and it happens in the same way. I was at a function like this and met Andrew Snowball from Amer Sports, that's the Wilson brand. I come from a background of we've been recycling electronic waste for 10 years with a product stewardship program, and who knows why, but we got chatting. We said, hey, we should do the same thing with sporting gear. Does anyone recycle all of that equipment? We're scratching our heads saying pretty much no one. Fortunately, federal government was doing grants under the National Product Stewardship Investment Fund. So I have to say thanks to them because they're funding a pilot program. So our pilot program is running all around Australia at the moment in partnership with Amer, the Wilson brand, and you'll hear from Hamish from Wilson later on as well. Our focus is on tennis balls. So we do collections at tennis clubs. You saw the boxes in that video there. We're also got a partnership with Rebel Sports where we're collecting in Victoria, looking to go national with them. We do school collections, we do councils. Pretty much we'll do anything with anyone at the moment because it is a pilot. It's funded by the government, so it's free for the participants. We're learning how to recycle, who wants to be involved, and now we're getting to the pointy end of asking now who's going to pay after the pilot. It's product stewardship. We'll talk about that later. That tends to mean the manufacturer pays. But there's a lot of people in this sports world who should actually be involved and be supporting this. So we're talking to sports codes. We had a fantastic event on the weekend. Adrian, one of our guys, was there with Netball Victoria, who did a ball amnesty. And they offered a new ball if you brought 3 balls back. And they did it at their state national championships. And we got 2,500 netballs, which is about 750 kilos. It's 22 bulker bags. It's enormous. And we're now exploring ways to recycle this equipment as well. So we're doing tennis balls, we're doing inflates, sports balls with air in them. We're also doing ski gear. That's the problem one. So the poor table who for the mini hack have the skis, I'm going to come sit on your table because I need an answer. Some of the sports equipment is relatively easy to recycle. Some of it is an absolute nightmare. So you heard Michael talk about it's the design as well. So we're really keen to hear from anyone, particularly codes. The thing I found with Game On, and it's this combination of people are passionate about the environment. Well, maybe they should be more passionate, but they're definitely passionate about sport. You combine that together and it's an absolute winner. We just have people knocking our door down, want to being involved. And we're learning so much about their sports equipment and why you do and don't recycle it and so on. And it's quite interesting as well. We have a little competition. The box, when you walked in, the Perspex box, it's got some tennis balls and basketballs in there. If you guess how many balls are in there, I'll do a little walkie here, you win a prize. And this is a really cool thing. These are made by Most Valuable Planters. Is Tom here? No. Anyway. One of our strategies is we don't want to just shred and recycle everything. We want to get things reused as much as possible. So anything that we can identify for reuse, we've got charity partners. Same as Michael was saying, we push it back through the charity partners. And then we're saying, if you don't want to use it, give us back the dead things and we'll get them recycled or get them repurposed. So, you've just won the grand final. You've sunk this amazing 3-pointer. You keep the ball, but it stays in your cupboard for 10 years. You never do anything with it. So here you go, repurposed, on display. Everyone who walks in, you get to tell them the story about that 3-pointer. So why can't we do that with cricket gear, tennis rackets, you name it? So when you do your mini hack as well, maybe we should think about not just How do you granulate it or whatever and reuse it? How can you repurpose it and give it another life, maybe in something that's not in a sporting application? That's my really short version.
That's fantastic. So I think the crux of it is Game On Recycling is still looking for partners in this pilot phase. And so we really want everyone in the room who has sports connections to be talking to Warren and the team.
Yes, please.
And then if you want to have you say online, there's on the top of the box, there's a QR code. So you can actually start participating in the consultation by scanning that QR code and filling out the questions. And so get on to Menti and guess the number of balls. And you could be going home with this amazing planter. So we are going to go and have morning tea now. Thank you so much for your time. These are all the groups that have supported us to get this event up and running, and all of our speakers. So sorry, Hamish and Fiona, but it's really, we cannot thank all of these people enough. Everybody is putting in their time pro bono to run this event. Kate, myself, SB, all of the speakers. So it really is a collaborative effort, and partnerships, like I said, is what's going to get us over the line. So our second session is strategies for field of play. So we've got, and I'll start on my left. So Scott Bryant from the City of Greater Bendigo. We've got Fiona Young from Tennis Victoria. We've got Hamish from Wilson, New Zealand, Australia, and we've got Warren from ANZRP. We're actually going to start with Hamish first, so we might grab Hamish a microphone. Will we swap? No, stay there. Yep. So Hamish, you are the head of Wilson, Australia and New Zealand at Amos Sports, which has the brands Solomon, Arc'teryx and Wilson Sporting Goods. And you've got this aim to really contribute to a cleaner environment, mitigate global warming, promote the circular economy and embrace inclusion and diversity. I think that's an important message as well. And you've got a really entrepreneurial team supporting you, and we know some of those people. So, you know, why we've got Hamish here is that we're starting to look at the policy and the strategy level from a manufacturing perspective. And we'd really love to hear from you how you're bringing this to life in Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me today. It's quite a complicated answer, so I'm thinking, you know, how do we kind of break that down? Within Australia and New Zealand, what we're doing really needs to start thinking about it from a global perspective and what we do and don't have control of. So, you know, being part of a relatively large global organization, there's things like supply chain, manufacturing, factories, raw materials, etc., that, you know, we directly don't have control of here in Australia. So from a global perspective, we rely on supply chain specialists and production teams to be able to source those products responsibly, both from a governance perspective, but also from an ethical perspective, and then making sure the quality and the standards of those goods are up to scratch. So, you know, we place a lot of trust in those people to make sure we're getting what we need. I think as it comes into Australia, the product, we can then take greater control of what we choose to do as a local organisation. One thing that we do, so across Amos Sports, and Annabelle brought it up, we're, you know, Arc'teryx, Solomon, Wilson, Atomic Skis, we're a relatively large organisation, but our building is a 5-star energy rated building. So that's one, you know, place where we started, and it's a really important place. We talk about entrepreneurship, and that wasn't driven by my GM, Andrew Snowball, who Warren was talking about earlier. It was driven by the staff. The staff wanted a 5-star energy rated building. We put a team together, a committee together, and we drove towards that when we built our new office out of Moorabbin. We also have 100% carbon offset within our local organisation. And again, that's driven by the people within the organisation and how we fund that through a P&L perspective. You know, our global team, management team love it, but at the end of the day, and something that's kind of come up in something from the other speakers, the commercials have to make sense in and around that. So as a local organisation, we've got to make choices on how we spend our money so that we can bring some of these values to life. And then we've got to figure out how we tell that to our consumer and our customers to make sure they know what we're doing so we can get the value of our decisions from a commercial perspective.
Yeah, and sorry, I just want to touch on that for a moment because I was doing my research and I went onto the Wilson Australia website, and the first banner is about a new initiative that you're doing in sustainability. So there's actually 3 sustainability issues on your front page in that scrolling banner, and I think that is part of that communication piece coming from a global brand. And so what sort of drives you to put that public face out there? Do you really feel like you're comfortable as a brand to be able to be doing that and back that up?
Yeah, another really good question. And I didn't mean to be long-winded. It's really important to us as an organisation. It's really important to us as a local organisation. And we've invested with Warren at ANZRP and with the Game On program, and we want to make sure that succeeds. So we want to tell the story in and around that, and we feel like we need to be responsible to that. We also think from a consumer perspective that the consumer more than ever wants to understand about what's happening with their products, where they're coming from, what's happening to them, you know, in the afterlife, and we want to tell that story as well. So we see large brand value being aligned to the story in and around the environment and sustainability.
Yep, that's awesome. And I know that people are going to want to ask questions, so we're going to keep moving on. Now, Fiona we're going to hear from next. Fiona is the manager of Places to Play at Tennis Victoria. She has such an amazing experience and longevity in sport and recreation industry. And her role is directly responsible for sustainability projects. She's had involvement at all sorts of level of sport and all sorts of sports. So cricket, golf, netball, squash and racquetball, and now tennis. And I feel like, Fiona, that we have a window from sport into almost every conversation we're having today with you. And we've got a screenshot of your website. And I'd just love for you to talk to that a little bit about how you're communicating this message and what that message is.
Thanks, Annabelle. I knew there'd be something about longevity in there. But yeah, so my role as manager of Places to Play is essentially around facilities, but certainly the environmental component of that has really come to the fore in the last few years. And probably just looking at what we put together on this page here, it sort of came from, I guess, 2 areas. So one was very much staff driven, that internally people wanted to do some things around the office, and we started doing some of those small projects. And then, of course, COVID came along and that changed things considerably. But certainly we established a couple of partnerships. So one was with apparel, and we had a staff uniform collection last year, and we'll be doing the same again this year. And it's something that we've put up on our website as opportunities for our clubs. But the other way that we've sort of started this journey too was around, again, started around 4 years ago. It was a project to look at financial sustainability of our clubs, and in particular electricity, and then in particular again lighting, LED lighting. And as I said, it started around financial sustainability, but then we thought it's far bigger than that, and it involves the carbon footprint of the sport. Could we actually measure that? So we did undertake a project to look at, across our community tennis facilities around the state, what are we contributing in terms of carbon footprint, and what are we consuming in terms of energy from the grid. So we've done that, and that's one of the items which you can't see, it's pretty small on here, but from that particular project, we came up with a whole lot of strategies around energy reduction, from really simple things that a club can do really easily, like, you know, draft suppressors, curtains, whatever it might be, right through to LED lighting and solar panels. And of course, those 2 are big ticket items that if we went to our clubs and say, hey, this is what we can do for the planet if we did this, everyone will go, yay, we're on board. How do we pay for it? So our next stage in this particular project is pursuing avenues around funding for that to be able to work through that with our clubs. But then we also looked at that from an internal perspective for our own organisation. And now our newest project starting this month is about measuring our own greenhouse gas emissions and then developing that roadmap for our own organisation. But it's also working together with our clubs, because tennis is more than just Tennis Victoria. It is our 750 plus affiliates. And my two colleagues at the table over there, Maddie and Jade, are working very hard at the moment around developing a process of rolling out this information, these resources to our clubs in a way that it's easy for them to get on board. They can become a gold, silver, bronze, planet champion, whatever we decide to call it, but working with our clubs and incentivising our clubs to do what they can at that local level.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. And just to pick up on a few of those themes, so and Hamish touched on this as well, that we're all citizens, so even the staff and the offices where you're working, it's important to them, and that funding it, like those big ticket items, is difficult. And the Australian Cricketers for Climate Action have done some work around that. Carina is another fund that's supporting that sort of work, and of course there's government as well. So I think we'll keep moving on so that people have time to ask questions. And Scott, you're next. Now, you have the most amazing background in the circular economy. It's incredible. So I'm not going to give the rap sheet too much, but you have worked for this as the Circular Economy Lead for Energy Infrastructure at Zero Waste Scotland, which is one of my favourites. Like Fiona, I think you really have this window into partnerships, and the elephant in the room, that is the closing of the regional landfill in Bendigo. And so what are we going to do with all of this stuff in Bendigo? And yeah, I just want to get your insights into it.
Thanks, Annabelle. Well, I guess the biggest challenge is the fact that the buck ultimately ends up stopping with local government, in terms of, you see that every day as residents, potentially as businesses. Stuff that we buy and use ultimately has to go somewhere. And we've got really good in recent decades of making sure that disappears out of sight, out of mind. And when your big hole in the ground, as happens to be ours in Greater Bendigo, gets really full, you come up a bit between a rock and a hard place in terms of, all right, what do we do next? Do we build another big hole? Do we say no? But if we're going to say no, what do we do next? And for us, that's probably the challenge that, if I'm honest, the region probably took on about 10 years too late, as is human nature. You ignore the problem as long as you can, and then, yeah, the hole gets really full. So for the last 3 years or so, we've been really, gung-ho in terms of how do we shape our infrastructure and what the local government, but also our residents and businesses need to be doing when that hole in the ground is closed.
Yeah, it's such a big problem in Bendigo, isn't it? And it sort of seems almost insurmountable, but I know that if we just narrow down into sport for a second, and just, I didn't mention that Scott is the Circular Economy Coordinator for the City of Greater Bendigo, so this really is his remit. I know that you're looking at partnerships with Game On Recycling, and that you have textile partnerships as well. So I'd just love to hear a little bit about how important those partnerships are to you to be able to manage this problem, and what you wish was happening in design earlier on so you didn't have this problem.
Yeah, so absolutely. So I guess from a city perspective, there's local governments like ours. I guess some are more proactive like ours and manage some of the facilities infrastructure. Others contract manage it out to innovative and not so innovative resource management businesses, but that's all about managing those commodity materials. And for us, the biggest challenge is coming along and finding organisations like ANZRP and the Game On Recycling program to do what do we do with these materials, given that they've gotten into our hands. We can use our infrastructure to look at what's reusable and get them back into the community. So bring in that sporting equipment and get it back out if it is in condition to be reused. But ultimately, those materials end up becoming knackered at some point, and we need to do something with it. And the challenge is, at the moment, the systems are just not set up to deal with that. It's very much a large volumes, commodity, low value system. And I guess on that design perspective, and I've been racking my brain at not using a sporting analogy today, given we're
do it.
But for me, it's how do we change the playing field from the manufacturing and design side. At the moment, there is very little incentive for the upper L's of the world to actually, be competitive in terms of it's really expensive to do what they're doing. It's, $1,000 a ton versus say $150 a ton to put something in a hole. And that's because at the moment we've got a system that's set up to, it's a free for all, if you will, in terms of the materials we can use, the life cycle cost of products. And I guess that's probably the one thing I'd love to kick out to the table discussions today is, I guess everyone talks of government, be it local, state or federal, as this thing, this entity. It represents us. We've elected it, theoretically, and it sort of sets the playing field or the rules of the game for how we want society and businesses to be able to operate. So we need to make it easier for those businesses and local organisations to be able to do the right thing, and that's either making it more, giving those incentives for apparel and other companies like that, Textiles Recycling Australia, except Game On Recycling, to be able to do that, and also incentivising businesses to be able to make those choices upstream with it, be it their own design and in-house operations, bringing renewables, etc. online, or also how they're working with their supply chains. And this slightly broken temple here is more just a bit of a guide that we've found, and be it in Bendigo, but also working with businesses and councils more broadly around Australia for the duration of this pandemic. It's sort of some pretty good principles that you can keep in mind when looking at how can I make my organisation more circular.
Yeah, and I think for sport, we've sort of got that circularity going already here, haven't we? So what Wilson's producing, and we've got some of their designed items on the table that come from recycled materials that we can talk to in a little bit. And then Fiona taking that messaging down to clubs to be able to engage in different projects, and then the council talking to their citizens. So, not their consumers, but their citizens about what to do about this problem. And I think that's where we're going to throw to Warren now. So product stewardship is actually a business model, isn't it? And so I want you to sort of hone in on product stewardship just a little bit so people can see how a business model fits into this scenario as well.
Yeah, sure. I just want to know, how good was our morning tea? And thank you that we sponsored, lovely. And as a sponsor, do I get to take home everything that wasn't eaten so I can recycle it?
Yeah, so people will be able to take home some morning tea.
Good. So product stewardship, or sometimes it gets called extended producer responsibility, or EPR. It's been around for ages. The apparel guys, they're doing product stewardship when they sent their socks out and said you can send your old socks back and we recycle them. That's product stewardship. We've got Sean from ASGA, wave your hands, Sean, Australian Sporting Goods Association. They're doing the Tread Lightly program, which is collecting shoes through sports retailers around Australia. We cut our teeth on electronic waste, or e-waste, and we've been going for about 10 years. Now, there's sort of two modes to product stewardship. There's voluntary or there's government driven. Our electronic waste program, there's government legislation that requires that to happen. And so we are funded by Apple and Dell and Toshiba and Canon and all those guys. And they pay us literally millions of dollars a year to collect and recycle equipment to meet targets that the government has set. But we are the only regulated product stewardship program in Australia. Well, there's a couple you could call regulated, but pretty much the only main one. Everything else is voluntary. And voluntary means that good companies such as Wilson and all the people who are supporting Sean with his program are forking up the money because as a manufacturer, they realise that they need to take responsibility for what they produce. So you're probably underselling yourself a little bit there, Hamish. The fact that AIMA and Wilson got behind Game On Recycling was a really significant step in that they're putting time and effort and money into ensuring we collect material to try and address the end life of their product. In Australia, we've got Mobile Muster, which you may have heard of. That's a voluntary program. There's now a mattress one. There's going to be one for child car seats. There's something for agricultural tarps and silage wrap and all these sorts of things. One of the universities is just launching a web page. There's 99 product stewardship programs already in existence in Australia, and they're not necessarily called that. They're just a take-back program where people are taking responsibility of that material. I'm a big fan of government regulated because that means the government is setting a quality standard as well to ensure what actually happens to it. If you have I've run an industry association previously as well, and often it's get in early and do something before government makes you do something else is often the attitude. And industry is going to, at times, often try and, geez, I'm going to get rude here, but let's be contentious, maybe do as little as they can to get the monkey off their back. But as Annabelle said at the start, we have a real environmental imperative, and you saw the video with the 7-year countdown on the ice runner. We have a real imperative to take action, and I don't believe voluntary action is really going to get us there. You put me on my soapbox here. This is terrible.
I'm going to cut you off in a sec.
It's not really going to get us there unless, I'll put the big unless industry really steps up to the plate. Sports analogy. There you go. We're taking a list of all of these. Hundreds of them now. And takes responsibility. So with Game On Recycling, what we're trying to do is figure out what is the most cost-effective way to doing it. Because remember, if industry is going to pay, and then let me just raise that question, should it just be the manufacturers that pay, or should it be the codes that pay? Should it be the participants that pay? Should it be local government? There's plenty of people who could pay, or should I say participate. So part of our stakeholder consultation, so please fill it in if you can, is what role do people want to play in product stewardship? What do they believe is reasonable? And how can we make that work together? So the amazing thing we found in the combination with sport, I got excited when Annabelle said there were going to be some people from the St Kilda Football Club here today. Are you here? Put your hands up. Oh, how disappointing. I was going to wear my St Kilda tie.
They're here.
They're here? Oh, go on. I'm going to hunt you down. Excellent. I know who you are now. But it's funny, isn't it? I mean, I've been in sustainability for 30 years, but then when you combine my sport club in it as well, it just takes it to another level. So the level of support and community engagement we've got is phenomenal. So I really, really, really think sports has the opportunity to not only address all of the material that it's actually producing, but even have a good kick at some of the bigger societal issues that we're dealing with, particularly some of the social sides of things. Okay, wrap up now. and influence other people. That comment about 50%, 56%.
Yeah, 56%. Yeah.
Of course it is. So if Michael Jordan starts rocking around in recycled sneakers and a jersey that's 4 years old, guess what? People are going to do the same. So we need those icons to start pushing that as well.
Yeah, and I think, Warren, you've brought up a couple of really interesting things about that legislation is coming. It's already there in Europe. So we as a sports industry want to be ahead of that legislative curve to make sure that we're protecting our financial resources rather than having to push them into something sort of without warning. We're already there, and Wilson's already doing that as well. And asking our partners, what is it that you need from the sports perspective? So to our partners, what is it that you need from us to make this work better?
Can I just say one thing? Because I have worked in government, thanks Hamish, and I don't want to bag government because it's hard to regulate effectively and tailor it to everybody's different requirements. So if the government does have to regulate, it's going to be a blunter instrument than if industry picks it up and runs with it and tailors it to exactly what you want. So it really is a better outcome if industry actually drives it.
Absolutely. Now, Kate's going to moderate the questions. Do you want to well, let's ask from the floor, will we, quickly?
Slightly, the questions from before are still coming up as well. So I think what we should do is continue to capture those questions, but we'll also roam the floor and actually get people on the audience, because as I said before, we'll think about how we actually address some of those questions either in the wrap up, etc. So if we don't get to the questions on the screen, but please let us continue to capture that because it's really rich information. But let's throw it open to the floor and I'll wander.
Yeah, because I can ask lots of questions, but who's got a question from the floor?
Hi, thanks very much. Jo Hoatson from Australian Sports Climate. I'm just really interested to understand people's opinions on the responsibility of the sporting codes. From my perspective, I really believe it is the players' associations and the sporting codes themselves that could be stepping up in a greater, stronger way to put in place their own standards around what could be expected and should be expected, so that it isn't, to use your words, a free-for-all at all costs performance, which seems to be where we're being sucked into more and more.
Hi, Joe. Nice to meet you in person. Yeah, I think there is a level of responsibility for the organisations. I guess our ultimate aim is through the projects that we're doing is that sustainability becomes part of our ways of working. It's business as usual. So therefore, it's part of the business of Tennis Victoria. So yeah, definitely we would see that the products and the things that we use in our sport. We're involved in the development of them. Why shouldn't we be involved in the whole journey? So yeah, I think we should. Yep. Yeah.
Policy doesn't have to just come from government, and it can actually come from the clubs and the organisations themselves. Great point.
I think we're seeing international legislation for sport around that already. So UEFA's released a circular economy policy. We've got plastics policies in the ocean race and other events. And I know that, you know, the FIBA Women's World Cup, the FIFA Women's World Cup, the Australian Open, all those events are starting to go down that path. So that's where merchandising hooks into that. But perhaps not the field of play equipment, because what's coming out of those events with field of play equipment is really high quality, so that can be redeployed. It's what's happening in City of Greater Bendigo, you know, that is the issue at that end of life for them, isn't it?
Oh, probably more just a plug/beg for those of you interested in the upcoming Commonwealth Games. If any of you are keen on pushing circular economy in sport, especially for this event, given it is such a short turnaround when you think they're planning Brisbane Olympic Games right now, please engage with, you know, at a state level, but also from a regional level, be it Bendigo, Ballarat, Geelong, those three regional councils. I guess we're probably a bit of a posse when it comes to circular economy versus, say, I guess we've had a bit more headspace for it. So the more voices we have pushing this, especially from the sports side, the more likely we've got to get this happening in the next 3 years.
You know, there's hopefully some people in the room can make that happen. So having those conversations with Commonwealth Games and those local government authorities about waste and being able to communicate that through sport, it's such an opportunity.
Good morning, everyone. John Harrington's my name from Golf Ball Recycling. Thank you for the morning tea, Warren, and for inviting me. My question is to the panel around sustainability, and what's your strategy on when we're all collecting what we propose to recycle and we're stockpiling and we're running into or dead ends around the use of that raw material or repurposing that material? What's the strategy, Warren, in particular, around not ending up with yards full of product?
Going to steal it really quickly to help Warren out. That was actually a question that Warren and I were talking about last week, and from Wilson's perspective, it's making sure we partner with people that can provide us with the governments in around that, which is again one of the reasons why we partnered with someone like ANZRP.
There's a bit of a mutual love club here, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you. It's a really good point. So we've actually engaged HRL, they're an independent research laboratory, to do research on the skis, which we don't have an answer to it yet. But I think it's like Michael from Apparel was saying, you kind of get into it and do it and then find some solutions. If we keep sitting back and just doing research, it won't happen quick enough. But you're right, you could end up with factories full of stuff. But from everything I've seen and the amount of innovation, and Aussies are pretty innovative when it comes to dealing with this sort of stuff, I'm very confident we will find solutions. The ball products, definitely. We've got lots of different things we can do with that. The ski product, there's always a way that you can do something that's a down cycle opportunity. At least it's avoiding landfill, but it's not the best. So if we can at least start there and then move up from there, that's great. And the more of that we do, the more we feed up the chain to research. So there is research happening in Europe around recycling carbon fibre out of sports equipment. And I think as it was noted, we're about 10 years behind Europe, was it? So yeah, we can learn a lot from overseas as well as doing our own innovation. So you've probably got warehouses full of golf balls and you're wondering what to do with them. Forums like this, sharing what we're doing. I reckon if you got around the room, there'll be someone who's got a bright idea of what to do with them. So more of this, please, and then we can get answers.
Who else would like to ask a question? Oh, yeah.
Just to build on the point there, was effectively also look outside the sporting industry. So carbon fibre or composites and glass fibre, perfect examples. There are massive industries that aren't sport related that have this headache. You potentially have the profile and potentially the social push to get this solution happening. And these other industries are hiding in the background and they have the volumes and potentially the actual headache. So whether you can draw on the problem and the money that's potentially in the room there as well would potentially be huge.
Just more collaboration, Scott.
Yeah, and I started doing a little bit of research into sponsorship in sport, and I haven't finished it yet, but my preliminary findings are that the car industry is so supportive of sport and it has a massive role to play in mobility as well, but they are really working hard in the circular economy space. And so what are the partnerships you can have with your major sponsors to help drive this change? And then I think something that we haven't touched on yet, just before we go to another question, and some people had talked about at morning tea, was what happens to the end product. And we heard a little bit about that, but a couple of tables have got tennis ball fluff, if someone wants to hold that up. So yeah, that's what it looks like at the end. And so that whole cycle of here's the conversation with what we're getting, and then it's going through a system that we're building, and when it comes out the other end, how are we going to use it? And I don't know if anyone wants to have, we're not sure we've got anyone on the panel to answer that question yet. No? Okay, well, maybe we'll mini hack it later on, but that's definitely a question. And there are major projects happening internationally around carbon fibre as well, which hopefully Wilson will be able to talk to one day soon.
Who's feeling brave and ready for a question? There we go. I don't have to go far.
Hi, I'm Declan from the Northeast Link program. This one's actually for you, Fiona. We're actually doing a bit of work together currently, but I have done a fair bit of work in the past around tennis courts and asset renewal, but also construction. And I've noticed there's this big shift towards synthetic surfaces, and that asset renewal program's every sort of 10 to 15 years. But I've actually only ever heard of one company that's looking to recycle that synthetic surface. Does Tennis Victoria or Tennis Australia have like a program or a plan to push that further with some of the leading companies in this industry?
I certainly talked about it, and Matt's there from Tennis Australia that can probably add to it, and Jared from Sport Eng. So yeah, we've certainly recognised the synthetic surface issue, and I suppose if you delve a bit deeper into construction, concrete or asphalt bases, and again speak to Jared on that one, but yeah, it is one of those things, and I think Warren mentioned we're well behind Europe in a lot of their development, and I think in terms of some of the synthetic surfaces, some of the rubber backings and so forth within the products that we use, that there's certainly scope there to look at where those things are going. And Annabelle mentioned partnerships. I'm going to put my hand up and say we're interested in any sort of partnerships that we can have, and I think Matt would be too, with Tennis Australia, around what might happen to those sorts of surfaces, because along with acrylic surfaces, yes, synthetic are becoming more prevalent. So yeah, definitely interested in what the end of life situation looks like.
Just seen a small connection being made here with someone who's coming from a company who's actually doing some of that work. So that's a really beautiful example of collaboration in action. Who else has a question? Yes, here we go. Let's have a spruik.
I'm from Tough Group. We're the company that's building the recycling plant in Barnawatha in Victoria. So I'll come and see you afterwards, Fiona. I'd just like to say thank you to Sustainability Victoria, who's one of our grant participants in regards to that. So it's been a very interesting conversation for us to listen to. So thank you for your time.
I don't know, Warren wants to say something in a second, but Jared or Matt, do you want to contribute to that conversation, or are you happy to hold the mini hack?
Hold on, we need a microphone for the live audience, otherwise they can't hear you, even me.
I look after climate action for Australia.
we have a 5-year strategy and it's priced in. So we'll see what the exec gives me in terms of budget year on year, but it is priced in to do some research and support programs in across the tennis product line. So whether that's balls, strings, rackets, all the rest of it. I don't have any this year, but the ambition is built into that 5-year plan around reducing emissions, consuming responsibly, and future-proofing the sport.
Yeah, and you're getting those from the UN Sports for Climate Action Framework, really, aren't you? Those sort of those themes, and then, well, sort of.
Sports organisations to develop their own strategy. You can spend 50 grand with a consultancy to give you a strategy off the shelf, but I think it's really important to develop that in-house, and we have. But yeah, I'd highly recommend also UN Sports for Climate Action in terms of, I think in the sports industry, you've got to keep things pretty simple, pretty straightforward, pretty accessible. So yeah, we've really simple 3-pillar strategy, and UN Sports for Climate Action is a really simple 5-pillar, 5-principle kind of framework that's really clean and really easy to communicate, and that's half the battle.
Yeah, and there's another point you made that's actually going into the budget item, and if we want this to be front and centre, we have to budget for it. Yeah. Okay, so Jared, did you want to contribute at all to that conversation quickly?
I mean, the synthetic market is a interesting space at the moment. Obviously, in Europe at the moment, they're outlawing the use of rubber in the next 3-4 years as an infill product. So a lot of long pole products, so synthetics for soccer, AFL, rugby, will not have rubber in it in 3-4 years' time. So that creates another problem for the tyre industry. You know, we've created a path for them to use recycled rubber in synthetic fields, which the jury's out about whether it's a knee-jerk reaction, because there are ways to contain and reuse it at the end of life, but it is an evolving conversation. Europe is a lot further away, and the guys from Tough Group are obviously bringing the ability to recycle, but it's around separating the products, trying not to downscope it and be able to put it back in. But as Fiona touched on, there's other conversations around embodied carbon in the fields of play that you're designing, whether it's concrete, asphalt from your tennis courts. You know, an asphalt court is about 40% reduction in carbon embodiment in a design. So easy to fix and a lot cheaper. So we're still stuck in a lot of the ways we've been looking at things from the 80s, 90s, and we really need to evolve that way we think.
Yeah, and I think maybe the Commonwealth Games is providing us that opportunity to have all of these people who have this circular relationship. So right from manufacturing to the sport, to the council, to the people who are collecting and grinding up, to the people who are building the venues, that conversation can start evolving now. And if it's not for the Commonwealth Games, it's for all the other mega events and our usual events that we're having year in, year out in Australia, because we are the sporting capital of the world for the live streamers. Now we've got another question from the floor.
Hi, my name's Joanne, and it's a little bit of a self-plug, but from Sport for All, we're a social enterprise sports store that's been operating as a charity for 16 years, and we can accept all reusable sporting goods and find a home for it. But as we distribute that out to community, we would really like to collaborate and develop a way that when that product's out to community, it can get sent back, because we're sending nationally, so into regional remote areas. So
yeah, and I think Game On Recycling is definitely part of that solution. And one of the conversations Warren and I have had before as well is that when it's going out in those communities, we need to get it back. Otherwise, again, we're transferring goodwill, but product that takes with it a bad taste if it's left there and there's no place for it to go. Yeah. I'm mindful of time.
We've got time for 1 or 2 more questions. If we've got anyone burning questions. We have been capturing them anyway through Menti, so we'll definitely use that to think through our next session.
Yeah, I think, oh yes, Warren wanted to add something.
Just to go on from what Scott was saying about different industries. So in the e-waste industry, plastic is about a quarter of what we recover. Big problem in Australia right now because of new export bans. We have to process it in Australia. There's a lot of activity happening with new plants being built in Victoria. SV has and federal funding has supported a lot of new projects. So if you've got a significant waste plastic stream in your sport that previously you haven't been able to deal with, I reckon within the next 12 months, someone should be able to take that and recycle it for you. So just keep your ears open.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is that partnership. Keep your ears open, talk to people, ask those questions. Now, I just wanted to touch on that there's another organisation that you can join in Australia called Sports Environment Alliance Australia, and they've supported this event by getting the word out to their membership. So make sure that you check them out as well, because the stronger our voice in sport can be, whatever organisation you're joining, whoever you're talking to, the stronger the action will be on the ground as well. Now, does anyone have a closing remark?
Yeah, I will. There's been a lot of talk about the product creation at the start, making it more the ability to recycle it. And I think one thing we keep forgetting a little bit about, or something we take greater consideration, is the consumer. Like, what do they want? Like, if we look around at everyone's shoes today, and they're all a color. So Salomon has developed a shoe from the get-go. It's called Zero, that can be recycled from the start. So they've built it. It can be 100% recycled, but it's only in white, or bleached white, essentially. So then we've got the consumer, we've got participants in our sporting organisations, we've got people involved. So from a product perspective, we look at the balls on the table and we go, okay, does the consumer want a green ball? What is the performance of that Trinity ball versus something that's in a compression container? And I think like the whole center of it all, and something that we've got to be extremely mindful of, is that consumer, participant or citizen, and how they're using the products, how they're using our sports fields, because we can put a lot of energy into all these things that we're doing, but if they don't choose to purchase, or if they don't choose to participate, or if they don't choose to be involved, then we're going to get nowhere. So we've really got to centre our thinking around those particular people and how we educate them and make different choices in everyday life. And I just wanted to bring that to the forefront, because it's such an important part of everything that we're all going to do. And if we go down a path where no one wants it, then it's just going to fall on its face.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and it's definitely something we can bring up in the mini hack.
And I guess from my point of view, and I think it's sort of mentioned before about the power of sport, and I guess harnessing all the sports that might be in the room. I mean, we do compete for the same market, but we do collaborate. And I suppose the opportunities to do that in this space certainly be open to that. It can be a little bit overwhelming when you first look at the whole scene and where do we start. So I think, from our point of view, we're happy to share what we've learned so far, and I've stressed we're early in on our journey, but being able to learn from others and share and collaborate would be, and partnerships, and quite happy to note apparel, Game On, Tread Lightly are on our website. So yeah, share and learn.
Yeah, and I think that sharing is essential, isn't it? We are not going to win unless we share. Yeah.
I think just to build on Hamish's point from our bit, as a consumer, as a citizen, I think just, I guess the first act is you came in the door today, but also just to consider everything that you're wearing and you brought with you today, everything you've got at home has come from somewhere, has to go somewhere. And both from your choice as an individual, but also how you engage with your families, your networks, your businesses, and also then how you want your society to be set up. That's the only way we're going to get this to shift, is by being more mindful and conscious of all of those decisions. You can't necessarily do it all yourself, buying the right stuff. That's a good start, but also having those conversations and actually making sure it's front of most people's mind, or at least front of their subconscious.
Yeah, and it's that Sydney jingle. We're all in this together. So, yep, one last thing. Go on, I want you to.
Calm the Saints. No, that wasn't. No, club and community involvement, definitely. And it doesn't mean that they have to pay, but they have to be involved and supportive. And that's going to drive the consumer, the citizens, and everybody else. So very important.
Yeah, it's so critical.
Go Saints.
So can we please give these guys a warm round? Now that's it from me, and I'm going to throw to Kate, and she's going to guide you through the rest of the afternoon for the mini hack.
We're almost at that point.
Actually, sorry, Kate, we need to do the ball guess at some point.
Yes, I've written it down. I've already done it.
You're onto it.
We are such a dynamic duo. Yeah, thank you for that panel session. This is the moment where we're going to say goodbye to everyone on the live stream.